All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be speaking with you today. Thank you, Tasha, for inviting me, and to all the group leaders for welcoming me this afternoon. As Tasha said, I'm in Tel Aviv, where I relocated when my partner got a faculty job here, and I had to reinvent myself outside of a school because I don't speak the language here. And I found my way to a really interesting ed tech company where I'm the in-house educator, and I do a lot of speaking and writing about and working on school communications. And so that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today. And I give a lot of webinars and I do a lot of speaking to school principals, primarily to a public school audience. So it's fun to speak to a group of independent school division heads because that's really my background as well. I do want to tell you it's after 8 o'clock at night here. I'm in my son's bedroom. The blur behind me is a bunk bed. I've already had one naked 12-year-old boy dash in here and gasp in horror. So no promises about what's happening in the background of the blur. So I will just say that as a disclaimer. All right. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which will take me just a sec. Oh, wait a minute. Before I do that, hold on. I don't want to do that quite yet. No. Stop that. Yeah, no, I just want to put the presenter view so that I can see my speaker notes as I'm talking to you guys. Now I can share screen. Okay. All right. You see my screen or you see my speaker notes?
Screen. We got you. We see your screen. We don't see speaker notes.
All right. Terrific. Perfect. All right, great. So I hadn't realized until I started working on this talk that I was a new division head 20 years ago this fall. And it doesn't actually feel like it was that long ago. When I started as the middle school principal at Calhoun, I had never actually worked in a middle school. I had been teaching and deaning and department chairing in the high school division of LREI for 8 years. Prior to that, along with a stint as a Klingenstein Fellow, which is how I met Tasha. So I was lucky when I started at Calhoun that I had a built-in Klingenstein cohort that I could turn to for advice and for support. A lot of those first couple of years were trial and error, and really they were mostly error. So to that end, my goal today is to give you actionable advice that you can turn around and implement, and that will hopefully make your lives a little bit easier. And a note that a pet peeve of mine is when people read slides to me. It drives me mad for some reason. So I'm not going to read any slides to you. I'm going to just give you a little bit of quiet to read slides to yourself, and then I'm going to say some other stuff to contextualize them. And next week you'll get from Tasha or Jason or Jane or somebody else will send you a follow-up newsletter from me, and it will include this recording, it will include the slides, and it will include all of the resources and stats that I share with you along with my contact info. So you don't have to worry about taking notes or screenshotting anything or anything like that. I'm going to send all of it to you. Okay, so let's dive in. So what I'm offering up today for your consideration is a framework for building a culture of communication in your division with the purpose of supporting every student to succeed and to thrive. So when I began as the middle school division head at Calhoun, I gave a lot of thought to how I wanted to communicate with parents. And what I decided to do was to host a monthly coffee hour at school. And it went great. I had a steady cohort of parents who showed up. I could get their input on things and their buy-in, and I really liked the setup that I developed. 20 years later, here's what I think about it now. So let's take a look at why. And by the way, feel free to chime in at any time I can't really see you, so you can just shout out, or those of you on Zoom, write something in the chat. But this slide, if you have anything to add to it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So really, my pitch today is that the best foundation for a school communication strategy at the classroom, the division, or even the school-wide level is a weekly digital update. So I want to take a step back and talk for a second about the big picture. So I pose a question at the top of this slide. What is the purpose of schools communications? And my answer to this question is that school communications are about building relationships. And if you think about the phrase keeping in touch, it's a very physical phrase, and it's two ways. It's reciprocal. To stay in touch, two people have to be in relationship together. One person can't be in touch with someone all by themselves. What we're talking about with school communications is staying in touch with parents all year long and using updates as one vehicle for being in relationship with them. And if you think about that, it might inform differently everything that you send home. It might shift your thinking about how and what you communicate. Oh, I'm having a hot flash. Don't mind me while the sweat starts to drip. All right, so just take a minute and I'm going to sit quietly while you just take a look at these stats. So amazingly, there's a single, simple, but powerful reason behind all this improvement. And the reason is trust. The more parents hear from their child's teacher and division head, the more they feel in the know about what's happening with their child at school. The more parents feel involved in school life, the more they trust the adults in the building. And that's the key. The more parents trust the adults at school, the more they support their child's learning. This is equally important for students who are first generation in independent schools as students who are legacies. And in fact, it's the latter group who can often struggle more with this particular bulleted list, even though they're the group with far greater access and privilege. So, given these three stats, what do you think is the percentage of parents who actually manage to put their hands on those flyers?
Someone said 10.
Well, I don't actually know the answer, but I think this is a good visual for my dad would say slim to none. I think the picture on the left gives you a good sense of how likely the parent is to receive any kind of communication that arrives home in a backpack, where the picture on the right illustrates the ease with which a parent can access a digital newsletter. So when we talk about teaching and learning, we talk about reaching students where they are. When we talk about parent communications, I really believe that digital communications is reaching parents where they are. Okay, so this is a meme that I made, and I put it there just because I think it's funny. All right, so this is a busy slide, I know, but it summarizes why digital communications are that much more effective for reaching parents. And I'm gonna expand on each of these in the numbered list. But I just want to give everyone a second if anyone has any questions they want to transmit my way. Okay. All right. Number one, a digital update is never going into a backpack of any kind. It's delivered individually to each and every parent. Number two, you never have to start from scratch. You can simply duplicate and update every week. Number three, you can schedule delivery ahead of time, which ensures that you are creating a rhythm to your updates that parents internalize and anticipate. Number four, you can add logos, colors, fonts, mottos, images that amplify your school's brand or your division's brand. Number five, teachers can edit newsletters together. They can share mailing lists. They can share folders. So for example, the whole second grade team could collaborate to produce one weekly newsletter, which each teacher could then duplicate and personalize with photos from their own classroom. Six, you can send a digital letter home in so many different ways via your school's mass notification system. You can post it on social media. You can embed it on your homepage. You can attach it as PDF to an email. And this means that you are vastly increasing your chances of reaching all parents. And lastly, some percentage of your families speak a language other than English at home. And you want to ensure that those families can easily translate your communications. And that is a basic equity issue that I'll expand on in a little bit. So I want to talk for a minute about this demographic group, of which undoubtedly some of you belong to. So just take a minute to glance over these school stats about millennial parents. So just to break it down a little bit, the first stat means that 80% of this year's second grade students have millennial parents. By the time this group of second graders is in seventh grade, 100% of the incoming kindergartners will have millennial parents. And so for this reason, it's important to think about the communication requirements of the millennial generation, which are different from my generation, which is the one currently aging out, which happens to be Generation X, even though every time I say that, my son tells me that's a boomer thing to say.
Okay.
So what does communications for millennials mean? Well, as the first generation of digital natives, millennials were born into the era of the smart device, which means they are extremely active on social media and very comfortable chronicling their lives for public consumption. Millennials put everything on their calendars. They are used to posting photos of their kids, and they take it as a sign of connection when they see photos of their kids. With 20% of all students from non-English speaking homes, some percentage of those parents are also millennials. Lastly, millennials have some funny quirks. Like, for example, they hate phone calls. Most millennials find unscheduled phone calls to be rude interruptions of their day. Why is this? It is because millennials live by their schedules. And so a phone call that is not scheduled is just wrong. Everything has to be penciled in, including leisure time. All right, you will no doubt have a smaller population of multilingual families than millennial families in your division, but every family's participation matters. And this is also a growing demographic in the US. So I don't know if you know these numbers, but in public schools today, 20% of students speak a language other than English at home. In 3 years, the number will grow to a quarter of all K-12 public students. Did I say that? K-12 public school students in the US, 1 out of every 4 students. So I looked for them, but I don't have stats for independent school students, but I know for certain that whether it's families from feeder programs like Prep for Prep or international students at boarding schools, the number of students whose parents do not speak English as a first language is growing. And if we start from the position that all parents care deeply about their children's education and all children have the innate ability to succeed, how does that shift our outreach to multilingual families? What can we do in our schools to help students and parents leap over the language barrier? The bottom line is that parents who cannot read the updates that come home from school are excluded from participating in whatever is going on. Everything from attending events to helping with homework. So it's adding an additional barrier to success for students, one that independent schools could easily remove. And here I want to just share a personal story from a parent perspective. I relocated to Israel several years ago for my partner's job with 3 school-age kids, which makes me an immigrant parent, and it's very, very challenging. First of all, it's difficult to have to rely on unreliable narrators, namely my kids, for information about what's going on at school. Although there are a number of immigrant families in the school, the administration doesn't make an effort to bring together families who might speak the same language, which would have helped me build community, or provide materials for or updates in a translatable form, which would help me to support my kids better. And the upshot is that I'm alienated by my kids' school experience. And from the vantage point of their teachers, I'm pretty sure that it looks like I don't care about their education, when obviously nothing could be further from the truth. But the bottom line is that the school has not built trust with me. So now that we've looked at the qualities of millennial parents, the statistics about multilingual families, and what the research says about the significance of parent communications, we need to ask the question, how the heck are you supposed to accomplish this in a digital update? Well, you actually can, I promise. And ultimately, what it gives back to you in parent trust is worth the time and the effort that it takes. Okay, so here come some straightforward bullet points. Creating a regular update is a matter of coming up with the template and then duplicating and updating it each week. This slide has 4 suggestions for the basic categories that you would want to include in a weekly newsletter. So once you've developed your template, you want to think about how you're going to share it with parents. So at the top, I talk about choose a cadence. By choosing a cadence, I mean decide how often you're going to update parents. Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? I would make the case that a weekly update goes the furthest in terms of building your visibility as a leader, showing that you're in touch with what's actually happening in the classrooms and helping families to get to know you. It's not going to be feasible for everyone, and that is okay. Scheduling your updates is important because you're going to begin to build anticipation for it. You want folks to begin to expect their visit with the division head, to look forward to it. And consistency is a big part of building trust. And number 3, like, don't just send it and pray. Like, whatever platform you use should have analytics, and those analytics have something to tell you about which parents are reading your updates and which ones aren't, about which links they're clicking and which they aren't. And just like teachers should be using student data to inform their teaching, you can be using newsletter data to improve your communications with parents. The engagement numbers don't lie. And just an entertaining little visual to emphasize the last point about making good use of your analytics. So you all have a lot on your plates. I have been there and I truly get it. I also think that this is worth taking on. You'll see parents will begin to reply to your emails. They'll start talking to you about your updates, and you'll build a lot of goodwill. But it's also okay to decide that you just can't. And in that case, launch the initiative, set the wheels in motion, and hand it off to someone else. The important thing is that parents are getting a chatty peek inside the week and being kept intentionally in the know. Okay, so we've spent some time talking about the importance of building relationships with parents via digital updates. And now we're going to shift over to talking about faculty, because those relationships are equally essential. As a new division head, you have the challenging task of establishing your authority, your expertise, and your authenticity as an education leader. Whether you're walking into a functional or a dysfunctional situation, it will take time to build trust. Weekly faculty updates, like parent communications, help you cover a lot of ground. So by now you get the idea that you can use a weekly update to both build relationship and be in relationship. The same goes for faculty. But with faculty, I want to talk about something a little different. I want to talk about what I call the happiness factor. And by that, I mean the intangible element that makes us feel good about what we do. I believe that a well-constructed update can go a long way towards amplifying the happiness factor for your faculty, which is a really important part of teacher retention. And one of the biggest strains on a division and on your time is having to replace teachers. So what you see on the screen is a Venn diagram of the happiness factor as it might be enacted in a weekly update. And we'll take each of these 3 categories one at a time. So number 1, here's a few stats for you. So I'll start with this. This is an obvious statement. Working in a school has not been easy these past few years. And there are many ways that school leaders have no control over the insanity that's happening out there. That said, there are very specific areas related to the happiness factor that you do have control over. And that's the part that I want to focus on. So, right, the keywords here are appreciated, recognized, and rewards. So let's look at how we accomplish that in a weekly newsletter. So in every update, dedicate space to honoring faculty work, whether in or out of the classroom. For example, shout out to Mr. Shapiro for the incredible hallway display for Hispanic Heritage Month. Or, wow, I witnessed a light bulb moment in Ms. Gregory's 8th grade ELA class today during a rousing discussion of point of view in a Langston Hughes poem. Or, this week's Division Head Hall of Fame recognizes inductees in the category of fastest to turn in midterm reports. The honors go to all. Or alternatively, every week, highlight one person on your team. I wrote a blog post where I go into more detail on these ideas, and I'll include that for you in the follow-up newsletter. In addition to your recognition, teachers need to see their value reflected back in the words of the community that they serve. Building opportunities for parents and students to hold up a mirror is powerful. In these ways, you're subtly creating a culture that celebrates the work of your faculty and where they feel supported because they feel seen. And this also sets the tone for the way you'd like your faculty to communicate to parents about students, recognizing, celebrating, and honoring the work of their students. And by the way, one of the things I do for my job is create templates for newsletters that teachers and principals can duplicate and personalize. So on the left is a snippet of a school newsletter template I made, but that's the actual school chef from my years at Calhoun. So my independent school life weaves its way into my newsletter life in funny ways. Okay, the second concentric circle in the Venn diagram of the happiness factor is time. Every email that teachers receive is time away from planning, grading, prepping for a class, completing paperwork, or delay leaving school. It's time when they might be on their phones, when they could be working out, spending time with their own kids, cooking, or just Netflix and chilling. Which means that the second purpose of your update is functional and logistical. Obviously, things come up during the week, but the more you can cut down on emails by including info in your weekly update, the more you're showing respect for your faculty's time. And I heard when you were going around talking about what was going well, somebody talked about all of the meetings, and definitely you could cut down on meeting time with weekly updates. And then the third part is connected to professional learning. And I would really advocate for, if you're going to create a update for faculty, to create some form of inspiration corner in your update to faculty. Curate resources, share stories, find quotes, make memes, keep the act of educating young people relatable and engaging, and invite your faculty to join you in this corner to submit memes of the week, or the best article I found on equitable classroom management strategies, or here's something I tried, it didn't work, and here's what I would do differently next time. And I just want to close out this segment with this visual again to bring it home. Okay. Does anybody want to stop and ask anything, say anything?
Volume on here? Or
I'll see. Can I say something?
can she hear? Can she hear it? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Maybe somebody right next to the computer could repeat the question.
Okay. Or I can turn this around. Let me see. Okay. Try it. Go ahead.
We do a weekly newsletter, and we put all those for parents and families, and we thought we'll put all the important information in, and then we were at a PA meeting with the families, and we brought up something like, oh, well, when parent conferences, oh, we're having parent conferences, and we said, well, yes, it's in the newsletter. Oh, we don't look at the newsletter.
We get that too.
And what we have found is that sometimes when teachers individually email families because it's relevant to their own student's classroom, they'll be alerted to that email because it's personal to them, but they see the newsletter as a broad overview that's not personally related to them, even though it completely has information that they're going to need in it.
So that's an interesting challenge, is how can you take it and shift it so that it does feel relevant to their needs?
We have the same experience at our school, and it's, you know, just even Grandparent Day, we put it in for 2 weeks that Grandparent Day was happening, and then we had to close it off because attendance was too high, and all these parents wrote and said, what do you mean I'm closed out? I didn't see that. And it's clearly written, and we had 2 weeks. So I feel the same thing. It's a general newsletter that goes out every Friday. It does everything you say. It's got, you know, everything bulleted. It's got the week broken down by date. It's got everything. And, but they don't read it.
So I wonder what the analytics look like for it. So for example, one thing that isn't always an interesting hack is when you've got a group of parents who haven't actually opened the email to change the subject line so that it says something like, you know, important upcoming news for school that you must read, and resend it and see what happens.
You have another question or comment?
So we do have a newsletter like this, but I think, and most of our parents read it and the faculty, but I think it depends on the day you send it. We really avoid sending anything on Friday evening, and our newsletter, which is called L'Essentiel, is sent on Sunday morning at 8, you know, and I think that makes a big difference.
So good. Yes, Friday. Tara, did you hear that?
Yeah, I think Friday evening is a rough time to send a newsletter. I think Monday morning is also a rough time. I think there are a lot of schools that send out on Sundays. And when you can schedule, it's not like you're actually doing it on Sunday. You've created it ahead of time and you've scheduled it to send on Sunday. I think that is a good time. And I also think it's helpful because parents are getting themselves organized for the week on Sunday. And so it's helpful to know what's coming up ahead in the week.
Just a comment about, I wasn't sure who spoke and said that Grandparents Day had filled up, but then some parents like, we didn't see it. You know, it's one of those sort of almost squeaky wheel syndromes or cognitive biases where you hear loudest the one who said they didn't see it, but the fact that it had already filled up tells you that most people did see it. So even though the voice in your head is saying they didn't see it, the statistics are actually saying they did see it.
Right, and your analytics probably says that they saw it too.
That's true, but the difficult part is that the parents that didn't see it became angry about it, and you know, which, and you just want to say, but it filled up, people saw it. We tried to say that. So
I wanted to ask about your thoughts. We have our parent reps take information from our newsletter and they condense it and say, this is what's pertinent to all the 6th grade families, 7th grade. And so they send it out. And so parents tend to actually read that one from the parent reps more than they read our newsletter, and their updates don't include the letter that I spend hours writing, but that's okay. So I just wanted your thoughts in terms of, you know, kind of redistributing that information as well from parents.
So first of all, I would say that, I mean, I'm going to hit on this a little bit later. I wouldn't spend hours writing a letter because I don't think people read anything. I don't think they read long blocks of text anymore, honestly. I mean, I just don't. I think that people see something that's multi-paragraph and they don't read it. They'll look at things that have pictures and they'll look at things with bullet points, but blocks of text? No. And most people read things on their phones anyway. So if there's lots of words, it's not getting read. I think it's just a simple tragic fact of modern life that people don't really read anymore. So I would say don't worry too much about writing long, beautiful letters unless it's something of great urgency or tragedy. And Keila, I know you have something to say. So I just wanted to say, if parent reps are repurposing info and sending it out, and that's what parents are reading, I think the important thing is to get parents reading stuff. And I think it doesn't really matter if that's who it's coming from, that's okay. If you want to get your word home as a division head, then you have to think about what kind of vehicle you could create to capture people's attention. That's maybe not a lengthy letter, but some kind of like, like, what's the name? What's your name? Who asked the question?
Nisha.
So like, Nisha is like inside Nisha's head this week at school, and like pictures of cool things that you've seen happening, and a trivia question that somebody, whoever is the first person to answer gets a prize, and a little survey that you report on the results, and some things that are different, that aren't part of the regular updates, but that is a way for you to engage with parents slightly differently. All right, Keila, you're up.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Cara. One way that I found that elevates the amount of engagement with newsletters as well as class letters is to not only send them electronically, post them outside of the classroom. And for things that are really important, I'll make a copy and hand out to parents at dismissal or at arrival, and make sure like every parent is getting them in their hand versus the book bag. We're fortunate in that many of the students are not on the bus yet and are taking are taking their parents' transportation or caregiver. So being able to hand it to an adult, those 3 points of contact have worked well.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I did start off by showing you my reflection on how I sort of cultivated a small group of parents who I was communicating with and kind of forgot about the larger group. And I think if what works for you is to be having smaller group parent meetings, then another way to use your update is to report out on those meetings to the rest of the parents, and then to use micro surveys with Google Forms to get input from everybody else. And so that's another way that you're offering up something that is different from parent reps or from classroom teachers. That is about sort of the big picture leadership of your division.
Can I just say one thing about faculty newsletters? I don't do anything that I would call a newsletter, but we do call something a weekly bulletin. And I don't know, I think many of you do this. One of the things that we realized during COVID, of course, is that email was insane, right? You're trying to communicate with everybody because you're not seeing everybody in person. And I knew it was an issue before, but it became really a crisis. And we started using Google Sites for a bunch of things, but we write a weekly newsletter that is nested, that's hosted on a Google site. We call it the Frog. It's faculty resources on Google, and someone came up with the name The Frog. So actually that's where we put, we have lots of different tabs, like all the schedules, any information a faculty member could want is on the Frog, including the weekly update. So we send it on an email with a link to it on Sundays, and it lives there. And the nice thing is they can look back and find it if they forgot something the week before. So that's, I don't know how many people are doing that, that for us, that took, that took a 25-year career to think of something like that. But we found that helpful. It's not as beautiful as a newsletter. It doesn't have pictures. I would like to try to get to the next level of that, but that has been enormously helpful, I think, to everybody. And we really try to be very disciplined about not sending out middle school wide emails about anything unless it's in that newsletter, weekly update. Yes, one more person, then we should probably push forward. Yes, go ahead, Zoe.
Hey, Cara. So I worked at a school that had we did all the newsletters and everything else, but we also did a Sunday evening robocall that kind of basically had those bullets to this week. There's going to be an assembly for third grade. There's going to be. I wonder, have you had any experience of that? Whether, I mean, it's hard to develop metrics on that because it just went out. We had good feedback from families, but have you heard of other schools who've done that and whether that's a successful tool to use?
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of public school districts who use that and who find it very successful. I think that it reaches people in a different way. And I think really the key to reaching people is that you have to hit them across different fronts.
Right. Go ahead, Kara. I think you can proceed.
All right, so you've already seen this slide. I'm repeating it here because the research for classroom updates is the same for division head updates. And the way I've come to think about it is that family communication is as integral to a child's learning and development as choice of curriculum or instructional methods. And actually, in fact, I might like that to be on my epitaph one day. That's how strongly I feel it. Because if parents trust their child's teacher, what happens? They do a better job of supporting their child's learning. So as division head, maybe there's an ongoing system of updates in place already in your division, or maybe there's not, or maybe there's something that needs tweaking. The important thing is for you to assess what's right for your community, decide on some kind of regular system of updates, no matter who complains, because like division head updates, classroom communications are key to student success. The same metrics apply, the same trust issues, the same relationship issues. Now, what I know now that I didn't know then is that parent communication isn't what happens when the teaching is over. It's not a nice thing that we do as independent school educators. Parent communication is an instructional decision, and parent relationships are inextricable from student success in school. And if you're a teacher who's not actively working on keeping parents informed, you're not teaching as well as you should be. So as we talk about faculty update to parents, part of what we need to talk about is the culture of communication that you're building in your division via your updates to parents and to faculty, and via the time you prioritize for your faculty to communicate with parents of their students. So there's no particular answer about this. It depends on the age group of your students and the mission and the vision of your school, but it's the main question to consider. These are the basics. So if your teachers do this, then you will get this. Okay, and now we've come to the last segment of this talk, and I'm just going to share some tips and tricks for writing updates that actually get read. Okay, so I said this before, we have become a nation of skimmers. So when it comes to sending updates home, it's best to keep in mind that folks are not sitting down to enjoy your update like we used to sit down with a book. What these stats tell us is that how your update looks is just as important as what it says. Because if it doesn't look easy to read, people won't read it. I came into this business an educator, but I'm going to leave it as a proselytizer for formatting and design. As school leaders, you have important messages to convey. You need to say them in a way that gets the attention that they merit. So let's talk about what that looks like in action. And here are a few tips for you to follow. So every single component of an update, an email, a newsletter, everything is valuable space, starting with your title. It can be cute, it can be alliterative, but it needs to follow these 3 rules. Tell me who, tell me what, and tell me why. Here's an example. So if you look at this example from the point of view of a parent, starting on the left, the title of the newsletter is Second Grade Scholars. So let's put it through this 3W test. Okay, who is this newsletter for? Is it for the second grade scholars? I don't know. What is this newsletter about? Wait a minute. Is it for them or is it about them? Unclear. And why am I supposed to read it? I have no idea. Okay, so that title failed. So let's look at the example on the right, also from the perspective of a parent. This week in second grade, important info for families. Who is it for? Okay, families of second graders. What is it for? It's because there's important information. And why do I need to read it? Because there's something I need to know about. So yes, the second title is long, but long and clear gets you more readers than brief and unclear. Clear always wins. Clear over clever every time. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the title of a newsletter or an update, but good descriptive titles are also essential in the body of your update because it makes it easier for people to skim your update on mobile. There will be sections that are relevant for them, and there will be sections that aren't. And if there's no way for people to quickly tell what those sections are, they just won't read the update at all. And these essentially are the categories of your update, and you can keep them consistent from week to week. So you can see on the left, I've got 2 visible sections: what's happening in our building and parent resources for the summer. Easy categories to repeat week in and week out throughout July and August. Okay, I call this Marie Kondoing your newsletter. Every time you find yourself going old school and writing a long paragraph, you need to hit the brakes because no one's going to read it. It might be Pulitzer Prize worthy prose, but what use of that if no one reads it? So let's look at this example. Here's a very sweet paragraph for a faculty update about the way that playing with your pets helps you to relax. Very nice. Nothing wrong with it. Lovely. All right, let's KonMari it. Okay, there you go. Go back. There's the paragraph. There it is, post Marie Kondo. I took the first bolded part of the paragraph and I turned it into a headline with an emoji. Then I replaced the bulk of that text with a photo that captures the essence of what the author was trying to write. And I pulled out 2 key sentences, and then instead of giving a citation for the research, I just hyperlinked it, which actually means that some people will click it. So which one is people more likely to read? That one or that one? Okay, branding. So branding is the act of using visuals to assign meaning to your product or your organization. In your case, you've got your division and even yourself. So the visuals in your updates to families and faculty are an opportunity to communicate your school's values symbolically and to amplify your brand. And just a moment for number 4. Undoubtedly, you've got a communications director at your school who works really hard to streamline communications with parents and to keep a consistent branded set of communications going between home and school. And it's really important to partner with this person and get their buy-in for your divisional updates as separate from the work of the communications office. Your updates are there to serve an instructional purpose. Take their design advice, but hold firm to the ownership of regular updates as part and parcel of curricular oversight and integral to parent relationships for your division. And the last tip, every newsletter platform gives you an option to send yourself a test. How many of you send yourself test after test after test? That would be me. So that's not the tip. The final tip is send yourself a test, but then read it on your phone. If you find yourself scrolling without actually reading, it means your text is too long. Then you have to go back and you have to edit it down to the essentials and then send yourself another test. And once you're happy with the experience of reading it on your phone, then you are ready to share it with other people. Because another important email stat to remember is that 85% of people use smartphones to access their email. Okay, this is my summary slide. That's it. You exhausted? Questions?
No. That's great. Thank you.
I'm going to stop
We
share.
have a little bit of time. Oh, yeah, we can.
If I can figure it out. There, stop share. Oh, hi, everybody.
All right, can everyone hear everyone?
There are questions?
Comments, questions, thoughts? Everyone, I hope not everyone's feeling now totally overwhelmed. First year division head saying, now I have to create a beautiful newsletter. Bullet points should make you feel relieved. But
Yeah.
questions, thoughts? Anything you hadn't thought of?
As the leader of a high school, I wonder if what the research suggested anything about the needs of that age group and or faculty or parents of that age group rather than parents of younger people in terms of their expectation of being involved and also the students' development of autonomy and families' desire to give more independence. I just wonder if there's any research to suggest that it's more important at one age than another. And I'm not trying to do a newsletter at a high school person, I'm just curious.
You heard the question?
Yeah, I don't think it matters what age group you're talking about. I think that no matter what the age group is, it's important to your families to know that you are in touch with what's going on with the students and what's going on in the division, that you're visible and that you see what's happening in the classrooms and that you value what's going on in the school. And they want to hear about, you know, the world of learning as you see it, because you are the word on education for them.
Online, stay on.
Thanks.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so
much.
much for the time. I will send you all. Jane, send me the recording when you get a chance, and I'll send all of you a follow-up. And I wish all of you great good luck this year. Hang in there. You're going to make it. Bye, everybody.